Hello. So this is our lecture on mechanisms of evolution. It's part of our evolution unit. Let's get started. Just keep in mind that I'm only going to talk about 3 of the mechanisms right now. The 4th one is natural selection, and that's going to have its own lecture. So the first mechanism of evolution that I want to talk about is mutation. And you have probably heard of mutation before. I believe that 151 talks about mutation quite a bit. So this is just going to be a brief overview of mutation. If you need more information, remember that you always have your textbook. Okay, so mutation is when there is a change in the DNA, essentially. So if there's a change in the DNA, especially of a gamete producing cell like a spermatocyte or an oocyte, then you can get changes in the next population, right? The next generation of that group of organisms. And there are several types of mutation. There's point mutations, there's inversions, there's duplications or deletions within chromosomes. So not all mutations are actually going to lead to change, especially if those mutations are silent mutations, because those silent mutations don't actually produce a different type of result, like a different protein or anything like that. Okay. Mutation is the ultimate source of genetic variation. So all genetic variation comes from mutations, right? And then this is how new alleles arrive. And remember, we talked about alleles last time when we talked about Hardy-Weinberg, right? So some agents that may cause changes to the DNA include radiation. That could be ultraviolet radiation, sunburns, X-rays, right? Chemicals can cause this. Arsenic is one of them, right? Tobacco can be one of them, or at least the tobacco. Viruses can also cause mutations. So there's a lot of things that can cause mutations. Right? The next one I want to talk about is gene flow. Okay, gene flow is the movement of genes through different, essentially from one population to another population. And because the genes are what's moving, we're really talking about the individuals or the organisms that are moving from one population to another. There are 2 types of gene flow, right? There's immigration, which is the moving of organisms into a population from another population, right? And then there's also immigration, which is the moving of organisms from one population out to another population. And anytime an organism moves from or to a population, there is a change in the allele frequency just by default of there being more alleles in the population or less alleles in the population. There is a change in that population's allele pool, right, or their gene pool, right? So the image above me is showing you these beetles. There's a population of green beetles. Let me get my pointer. There's a population of green beetles here and a population of brown beetles here. If this brown beetle moves, right, through gene flow to this population, then this population's allele frequency may have changed, right? And this population alleles frequency definitely has changed if we're adding in a brown allele, right? And we don't know what color is what in terms of the genetics here, right? But the allele frequencies are changing, right? And then the last one I want to talk about is genetic drift, okay? So genetic drift is random. It's chance, sampling error, right? It's random, all right? So it is the change in the allele frequencies in a population due to these chance events or sampling error, okay? It is completely unrelated to benefits or costs of the alleles, so there's no natural selection necessarily happening here, right? And there are essentially 2 major types of genetic drift that we talk about, right? I do want to mention this before and say genetic drift happens in all populations. The only way the genetic drift would not happen is if you had an infinitely large population, and there is no such thing. So genetic drift happens in all populations. It is most notable, right, and most recognized in small populations because they're small, right? So the two types I want to talk about are the bottleneck effect, right, and the founder effect. Right, so the image above me is showing you what the bottleneck effect is. All right, so if you have a bottle, I just threw away my root beer bottle, but if you had a bottle and you put marbles in it and you shook that bottle upside down, only a few of those organisms are going to come out, right? And whatever few come out are completely random. And when that happens, essentially what you're doing is you're having the original population be what's in the bottle, right? And then you have some sort of bottlenecking effect, and we'll talk about what those could be, right? And then you have your surviving population. And your surviving population is random. It's whatever fell out of the bottle, right? These bottleneck effects can be usually natural disasters if we're talking about something natural, right? So floods, tsunamis, hurricanes, meteors, those types of things. Another source of a bottlenecking effect is humans, especially hunting or overfishing, those types of things. So those can be ways that we can reduce the populations of organisms very quickly and completely randomly. So those are what we would consider a bottleneck effect. The other type is a founder effect. Okay, and to found something means that you find it, right? So if we have a population, let's say down here, right, and there's a bunch of organisms in this population, right, and we're going to make some of them blue because I can, right? And let's say that a subset of these organisms, let's say these three right here, move to a new location where there is no organisms there already, right? So they move over here, and now because the subset of the population that moved was mostly blue, when they have offspring, maybe more of them are going to be blue than there are red, right? And so now you have a population over here that's pretty different than the founder population in terms of what the alleles are, right? Also remember, gene flow is the movement of organisms from one population to another population, right? Founder effect is the movement of some organisms from one population to a new place where there is none of those organisms, right? If there was already a population here, then that would be gene flow, not genetic drift, not the founder effect. But because there aren't any of this population over there already, it's a completely separate mechanism of evolution. Okay, and next time we're going to talk about natural selection. So I'll see you then. Bye.